Yeah, no. Repeat. Okay. Thank you to our interpreter, Astrid. Astrid, would you please share the interpretation instructions with our participants, and then we can turn on the interpretation function.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Am I ready?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for joining us today. In order to ensure all families are able to access this meeting in their preferred language, we are providing simultaneous interpretation in English and Spanish today. Please press the glove at the bottom of your computer screen and select your preferred language. If you are watching on a phone, press the three dots at the bottom right of your screen and then select your preferred language. If you choose Spanish, be sure to select Mute Original Audio option. Thank you. Buenas noches, gracias por estar con nosotros esta noche para asegurarnos de que todas las familias pueden tener acceso a esta reunión en su lenguaje de preferencia. Estamos proveyendo interpretación simultánea en inglés y en español. Por favor, en su pantalla usted puede ver un globito en la parte de abajo de la computadora. Por favor, ahí puede seleccionar su idioma preferido. Si usted está usando un teléfono, por favor, presione los tres puntos que están en la parte de abajo de la pantalla al lado derecho y allí puede seleccionar su idioma preferido. Si usted decide escoger español, asegúrese por favor que también pone su
saying it's decisive that they can no longer ride the bus. And so my thing is, you know, I'm fully aware that we have some students that may need to, because they broke the code of conduct, not ride the bus and have that. And I know that that has happened. I think my concern is if we limit ourselves to say that they can no longer ride the bus and this family cannot provide that alternative, then we are now limiting.
Did we at one, is this the back?
So
I don't-
we're
don't
each
know.
getting 2 minutes and includes answering time. So since you asked a question of Director Ramirez, that was included. The answer was included in your time that you've got.
Okay,
About
at
30
34
left.
seconds?
Yeah.
Okay, did we at one point, and so that's a good clarification, at one point ask to include a link to discipline matrix? Because
Good.
if we included the link to the discipline matrix, then the severity of that action could be linked to temporarily if it's less severe versus may, you know, may not ride the bus if it's a severe enough action. I feel like the discipline matrix might be a better fit for whether or not it's reinstated.
Director Tightler.
I guess I feel like may sort of includes temporarily, but I'm okay either way.
Director Step.
Yeah, I had the same thought because it's may kind of encompasses that, you know, but the matrix covers the, is it temporary or is it they're kicked off the bus for good? So I don't see that it helps. I don't see that it hurts, but I don't think we need it.
I understand where you're coming from with this. I don't know that adding temporarily is the way that I would suggest codifying it. I think that it might be that sentiment might be better held in either another sentence that says what you're saying. If a student has no other way to get to and from school, withholding public transportation is the last resort, or something to that effect. Like, that is the very last thing that we would do, is withhold it permanently. Just to put that intention somewhere in writing. But because my first thought was also that may encompassed it already. But I hear the intent.
I guess I regret not thinking of it sooner, and obviously coming to you, Jeff, or to both of you guys to come up with that wording or that sentence. And, you know, in reading it, that just, to me, that sort of fixed it in my brain, but I also really want the intention of, like, if a student, you know, has, obviously we have used the discipline matrix, but mom has expressed or dad has expressed that this child just has there is no other forum for them to arrive to school. You know, I don't want it to limit us or limit the family truly in us being able to provide the service. And, you know, I know that falls on all of us working collaboratively together, but I just really don't want kids to be like walking, you know, for a long time to school or trying to doing it in unsafe conditions when we just need to find an alternative to make sure they get to school on time.
I think, just I'm gonna use the last 10 seconds of my time. I think that it has to, whatever language we land on has to balance the needs of that individual student and the needs of the other students, and give some discretion to the principal, or if it needs to be elevated, if a decision is made to permanently withhold public transit for, you know, school transportation, then maybe that has to be elevated beyond the principal level and include someone at the district office. Like, would that address the concern? Because I mean, permanently withholding it does seem like a high level of discipline, so.
And just want to chime in, part of the reason we did say in alignment with the matrix is because for the severity of what the behavior is, should be some alignment there. We did discuss that first line, the privilege of riding a school bus versus like the right or the transportation right. And the hope here is that, or the goal here is that there is alignment that in the response to whatever the misbehavior or, might be is appropriate. I think you do make a good point, and I think we can consider what other alternatives might be if a student has expressly or behaved dangerously on the bus or keeping other students unsafe.
We're in the time for board discussion, so if there's anything else that.
I have another, I was thinking of it because in relation to our public speaker earlier tonight, I wonder if there is any, we're already discussing adding language, we're not adding, but amending this language. Is there anything in here that needs to address if a student is on any accommodations or an IEP or something that may need to be considered when deciding how a student is allowed to ride the bus again, or if they're in violation of the discipline matrix? I don't know, because specifically this relates to student suspensions, expulsions, and other disciplinary interventions is something different than the school bus privileges. Just throwing it out there for
I would
us to
hope
think
that,
about.
I would hope that the discipline matrix takes that into account.
I mean,
I don't know.
that would be a good question.
The discipline matrix is meant to be a regulation, correct? And so essentially you guys would be able to update that to include what Director Torres is.
Correct, yeah.
I just feel like the language here is ambiguous enough, but in a okay way that like, if they're being kicked off the bus for behaviors that is not becoming to the other students on the bus, then they were kicked off for a reason, and then having them ride the bus because they can't get to school would still be, they would need to be off the bus because their behaviors were not allowing them to be on the bus.
That's where I was coming from. When I was saying we need to balance the needs of everyone who's on the bus. And I think that this language does that.
And I guess I would just say that my concern is like, even if there was a student whose behavior was obviously an issue, if this mode of transportation is the only one that will enable them to have access to get to school on time, or to school in a safe manner, then I think as a district, we need to collaboratively work with the family and with the school to find the best method to make sure that the student is still able to get to school. And I mean, that's just the reality of us being in a space that families are coming from Rifle and families are headed up to assault. And so how do we work to accommodate families and students? And I just don't, my only concern was limiting ourselves to not being able to be creative and find solutions to get kids to school, if this was their only way to get to school.
But it's to that point, where it says the principal may withhold, the principal in conversation or collaboration with, the director of transportation or the superintendent or designate, like, to come up with that plan. It's I don't know how have the principals always made that decision on their own, or
I'm not sure of specific incidences. Am I allowed to?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, last time I messed up, so I'm trying to grow as a person. It's a good question. And I understand the intent in your point, Jasmine. I think it's really important. I guess I just feel like it's a balance of how would we roll in that situation? We would do everything we could to get that student in school, based on and following our process. And I also understand you want to ensure that that's happening, but working together, working collaboratively, that's exactly what would happen in this situation where if a student was dealt some type of punishment or response based on the discipline matrix, and they couldn't get to school any other way, I know we'd all huddle up to solve that problem as best we could and make sure that we are taking into account the safety of the student, the safety of the other students. And so I like to think that's absolutely what we would do. How we align this policy, I mean, I feel like it gives us the flexibility to do that. And if we're not doing that, then I guess I'd like to hold ourselves to a higher standard if that's the case, kind of internally too.
And I appreciate that, and I know that you know
Yeah.
how much I obviously trust your leadership. And my concern is always that when you leave
Mhm.
and when we change leadership
I get
in
it.
the future, what will ensure that future students will have that?
I
So
totally understand.
that's my only
Yeah,
concern
yeah.
there.
No, I get it.
We're gonna take a vote on this one as is. So board members, you're voting whether to approve this language in its final form as is or not, which would allow time to revise it and put it on the agenda in 2 weeks. Director or Chief Bean, can you please call the vote? Well, we pulled it separately, so, oh, yes, you need a motion.
I mean, I'll make the motion.
To approve,
I make a motion to approve policy JICC as presented.
a second.
Okay. Director Stepp,
I,
Director Ramirez,
I,
Director Bloomberg,
Aye.
Director Torres, aye, Director Tyler,
Aye.
motion passes.
Thank you. I've got that. Jen.
We've been in one area and I failed in another. Well, next time.
The next business in order is discussion on 2 personnel policies. Each board member will have 2 minutes to share comments or questions. We will start with Director Tyler. They are GBDG and GBGL. Workers' comp and staff victim.
I had a couple questions on the GBDG workers' comp. One of the questions it said in that is that all employees must attend an orientation to the safety rules and policy upon initial employment. And my question is, do we have this orientation training in place presently?
So you might notice that Chief Davlin in the hot seat, she wasn't able to make the meeting. And so as a team, we're going to try to field questions or at least note questions, even if we don't have an answer. So I'm going to note that one because I'm not sure.
My second question was on a different topic. So that was my question. Thank you.
Director Stepp.
And we'll pass along the question and get it to.
I don't have any questions at this time.
Director Ramirez.
well, so don't have any questions at this point, but I respond to any. No.
I mean, I guess you have this is your time, so yes.
I was just gonna say, in policy committee, and I don't know if Kelsey, you remember, but we went over this policy, and from what my understanding, there is something in play, like there is a, I already forgot what it's called. It's like a training, but not everybody like had the chance to do it, especially during the pandemic. And so that was part of our conversation of like, they're gonna, make a concerted effort to make sure that it happens.
Director Torres.
So I just had a clarification question on GBGL, staff victim leave. So this is saying, any staff member with accrued paid sick leave may take sick leave for any of the following purposes. The one that I am somewhat concerned with or want clarification on is number 3, to obtain mental health or other counseling. It seems like a more difficult area in which to provide documentation to show, because this is also confidential information that you wouldn't typically, like, if you're seeking medical attention, you could provide, I'm going to go see a doctor to get an injury fixed. I have some questions on how you would, for one, ask for something like that to show you're using sick time for that purpose, and 2, does it need to be for the purposes of treating or otherwise addressing? Or I guess that's my question. The others seem pretty straightforward if you needed to show why you needed to use that sick time. This one is just a little bit more, I think, tricky. So I would like to ask that to Angie, like, how would you get something like that to show? Or
Just the
if you needed to?
verification of it.
Yeah, or if that's even needed in those cases.
I suggested adding the red language during the policy committee to limit obtaining mental health or other counseling, because the original suggested CASB language didn't have the red language. And I thought too, that was very broad and seemed like something that if we're talking about victim leave, we should limit it to the reasons associated with the medical attention. I don't know the answer to how you get verification. And I just still wanted an answer to my question that's it's indicated in here, if that's automatically granted, or if that's something that someone will be reviewing, and if it's someone that someone has to review and grant, are we gonna indicate who that person will be in this policy? Other than that, I'm good with both policies.
I did think of a question. Is that good?
We have 5 minutes of discussion time now, so kick us off.
I'm curious as to why it's 3 working days of leave during a 12-month period. Because like if it says to
I'm sorry, which the victim leave?
down at the bottom where any staff member who will be employed with the district as the victim of certain crimes may request and will be granted up to 3 working days of leave. Like it says to make the employee's home secure or to seek new housing, like 3 days isn't gonna do that. So I don't, that's the question, is like, why are we limiting it to 3? Because it may take a lot longer to get the restraining order, find a new place to live, get safe, it's just.
I think that kind of comes back to my question of, are they automatically given 3, but we could grant more if we speak to the employee and decide that they need more to do that? Or is it they may be granted up to 3?
It says up to 3. Yeah, so that
But if
might
it
need some clarification from HR to, is there any flexibility there?
Yeah, and I do think
intent of that part is so that for those 4 purposes, staff members aren't tapping into their own personal leave or their own sick leave bank, and that they can grant from the district these up to 3 additional days on top of that for these 4 reasons.
prior to using their other leave, which is what, so it's like down lower. Additional days of leave.
Yeah, whether, so like, in addition to if they've already used the dates that they have, or actually instead of, so that they can use those dates for other intended purpose.
And I believe this policy is in alignment with new statute, right? Some of this is statutory.
I don't remember, but
I'm
I
pretty
was just
sure it
gonna say,
is.
Like, to Natalie's question earlier about number 3, when we went over this first, the staff victim leave, it was like specific to if a staff member was a victim of a crime. And so, it made sense to add that language of for the purpose of, because we were directly speaking of like, if they were a victim of crime, then we would provide it like, for that.
Well, I guess my question was in the, because as appropriate documentation requested by the employee supervisor or chief of human services, if you get a document from a counselor or a therapist, they're not, it's not going to say, I'm treating them in counseling for that. I mean, it may just say they are currently seeking counseling through my services. And so that's where my clarification is. If this policy says documentation may be requested, I would be very surprised if a counselor put very specifics
So
in
this,
that documentation, like the red is outlining. You might just get they're seeking services.
this whole policy is in line with the healthy workplace statute, so. My guess would be that providers would provide a letter that says my patient is seeking my services. And they fall under the healthy workplace statute, or their leave should be classified as leave that falls under the healthy workplace statute. Yeah,
just
but
say,
again, this
'cause I
is
see
statutory,
letters
the
like
3
this,
days is
yeah.
statutory too, the reference is down at the bottom.
And because this is a new policy, this will be 3 reads. So this is the first of 3.
Yeah, it'd be good to find out more.
Okay, the next business in order is discussion on One Health policy. Each board member will have 2 minutes to share comments or ask questions, and we begin with Director Teitler. So this is policy JLCD, right? So,
I did not have any comments or questions on this.
thank you. Director Stepp. Director Ramirez.
I don't have a question, but I comment that I appreciate that you guys have made a concerted effort to add this into making sure that we're gonna be able to get it in our state. I also would support, I would hope that we as a district and then the board would be in support of the policy that would help emphasize the education of our personnel and our staff. Know that there's a lot of services in the valley that are free and yet providing some of these opportunities, and you know that we have a parent from a student who passed away due to some kind of overdose, and so I really would advocate that we make a concerted effort to make sure our policies and stuff that we understand the issue of the valley. And we want to be effective and not necessarily reactive, but really prepared should the situation arise. Thank you guys, right?
Director Torres.
I agree with Director Ramirez. No questions. It's time.
Same for me. Thank you for being proactive in adding this, and I have no questions. We have 5 minutes of discussion time. If anyone has anything else to add.
I think if I'm looking at it, I do remember one question.
Oh.
And it's not necessarily for you, but it seems like at the school would make people sign a waiver that they're allowed to have. And they, probably making them sign a waiver and say that it's okay for them to get this next.
So
But like, it just seems like, or if it's understood that somebody is, give them this speech and say.
Can I respond?
Yes.
The safety of naloxone, I mean, and this is why when you have standing orders, it basically authorizes us to administer this to pretty much anybody. And I think you're bringing up a really good point, Kenny, it's often confusing for folks. And I think part of it is that naloxone's so safe in a lot of ways, and ways that maybe Advil can be misused. I think that's why it's so liberal, the standing orders for distribution of naloxone, because there's actually much less concern that it's going to be misused than something like Advil. And you're right to the point that like the assumption and what they're authorizing us to do is also that we would be protected under Good Samaritan laws if we are utilizing it. And they're also saying, and if you do it wrong, there's really not that much of a risk. Hence the like we don't have standing orders for anything else. And it's pretty rare to get that kind of big standing order that also just says y'all can hand it out, which is, quite liberal.
A follow-up question, because I was in a discussion about this as well at TMC, that there also seemed to be a shortage in getting this. Is this saying that we are required to have it, or we are doing everything in our ability to ensure that we have it stocked? I didn't read.
Yeah, like the policy language.
Yeah,
It's interesting. I mean, for us, the ability to get the stock in the most above board clear way, because there's plenty of nonprofits and local providers who are like, oh, we'll give it to you for the schools. It's because they also have orders like ours that say this, but we've said, no, let's make it really clean and clear. Let's do this right. So, the policy language just, I think, covers us, and that's what the bulk purchase program wanted to make sure that that you are aware of this, that our organization is aware of this, that we're not, that we're being transparent about it. So I think it's those pieces that they're trying to ensure by requiring us to participate in the bulk purchase order to have the language in the policy. Does that make sense?
I think so. I mean, yes. So it doesn't sound like we'll have an issue stocking it. I just am saying that because I know that it expires. And then if it's expired, you could still keep it on hand until a new one arrives. And sometimes there might be shipping or supply issues with that, but
right now, what we've heard from the bulk purchase orders, the minute we get all this paperwork completed, it would be just a couple days to get the stocks. And of course, all their language says pending our own stock. I think as folks and organizations are responding to this, like we're not really sure what that state, how much they're going to have on hand and how much they're going to need. I don't know. Again, this is the area where we're going to kind of hand it off to the nurses with how much it expires and how we reorder. So I don't know if we'll get into trouble that way. But it would be, I mean, we have some experience with these kinds of things through COVID with getting bulk purchase, or not bulk purchase, but bulk distribution of tests and that sort of thing. And thus far, those have worked pretty well. So cautiously optimistic.
I think our policy is fine because it starts with to the extent state funding and supplies are available. So I think that. Today, we should have.
Oh, good point. No, you. We could do that, and I might recommend we say at every facility, because we actually got standing orders for like the bus barn and this building. And so, I mean, we definitely could exchange that language to say the district will have stock supply at all of its facilities. Does that sound right?
I think so. That's the plan.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks. Great. We're moving into action. So
I move that the board of, yes, okay. Board approve the resolution authorizing a site lease between the district and leaseor of and UMB Bank as trustee, a lease purchase agreement between the district and the trustee, and other actions necessary to the financing of the proposed Meadowwood employee housing project as presented.
No time for board discussion. Each board member will have 2 minutes to share comments or questions, and we'll begin with Director Torres.
Love when I'm first, okay. I feel as though I'm grateful that we had this during our work session. I felt like the questions that I would have had during this time are ones that that we asked at our work session. Okay.
Director Taylor.
I would agree. I appreciate be part of their information that they presented to us already.
I mean, we wish it was 100.
There's a goal of 100. This is the first 50. Yeah. Done?
Do we have to call?
Mhm.
You get to vote? Please vote, yeah.
Dr. Sepp?
Somebody make a motion to approve the resolution. Okay.
Director Stepp? Director Ramirez? Director Kuhlenberg? Director Torres? Director Tyler? Motion passes.
Thank you all. And thank you for moving the time up too.
Thanks, everyone.
I just want to make sure I heard what the commenter had asked, and it was to have the opportunity to make sure that the student with a disability truly understands what they're admitting to or what they're talking about with the question. Was that, did I hear that? Mhm. Yep. Mhm. Yep. I wonder. We have a policy of discipline of students with disabilities, that's JK-2. So I'm wondering if it could be either an addition of a line in the current policy JKD, JKER to call it out, or adding it in a revision of JK-2. And right now at this moment, I don't have a firm answer, but I think that that could be something there. It does. I think I'm wondering if I think both are important. What the commenter I wondered was talking about was the informal hearing process, which typically takes place out of school, which would require awareness, right, of the administrator. A student has an IEP, do we make sure we understand the student, which to me is different than the expulsion hearing, which typically comes after the investigation has already been completed of whatever the infraction is to determine the breadth of expulsion or non-expulsion and everything in between. But I can note that as something to consider adding in terms of the term advocates, which may be able to apply beyond students with IEPs or not, or other youth. Currently in practice, they do get access to the work, but I think that clarifying is a completion. If they complete it all, do they get complete credit would be appropriate. I can take note of that and clarify that and connect also to current practice in terms of grades. Could be.
It might be a sentence at the beginning of this policy that says exactly what you just said,
Mhm.
that refers them to it.
If you didn't give me mine too.
It's because you said I don't have any questions.
Oh, but.
I jumped the gun.
But I have some comments. No, I mean, those are all my comments. And I think that this, yeah, does a much better job of ensuring that our students have access to a fair process. And that the procedures are much more clearly laid out, but. So we're in the discussion phase now. I guess. If anybody else has anything else to add.
I appreciate that because I think you absolutely nailed it. If it's already covered in another one, I just want to make sure it's not overlooked by not being, very apparent that covers.
It's so
That concern.
prescribed by
Yeah,
federal
that's
law that JKD is real, or JK2, excuse me, not D, is pretty. I mean, it's a 3-page robust policy, so.
I just added a line. It just says this regulation refers to general education students. For procedures for discipline of students with disabilities, refer to board policy JK2.
Perfect.
top.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just for clarification, Stacy, students with disabilities encompasses not just 504 and students on IEPs, but also those noted with any type of, I forget what they're called, the plan.
Any kind of, any student on an IEP, the individual education plan.
Yeah, but
Also a 504.
504, those are the two.
is there another type of plan? I thought there was.
The advanced learning plan, the ALP. But it's for gifted students.
Those are the only.
Well, that's good to know.
Then, yeah, Kenny, to your question, I had the same thought. That if students would only be able to achieve partial credit if there was some credit given for like in-class group work or something, like there would be no way to really make that up. But, any other discussion on this policy? Please call to vote.
Director Stepp,
Aye.
Director Ramirez. Aye. Director Bloomberg,
Aye.
Director Torres.
Aye.
Director Tyler.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Is it me next? No, okay. I'm still
Okay.
here.
Thank you. Where am I in here? The next business in order is action on policy IG on curriculum review and adoption on second of 3 readings. Is there a motion?
I move that the board approve policy IG and curriculum review and adoption on second of 3 readings as presented.
I
A
second.
second.
It's now time for board discussion. Each board member will have 2 minutes to share comments or ask questions. Director Stepp.
Did you say me?
Yeah. Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, I don't have any questions right now.
Director Ramirez.
I also don't have any questions right now.
Director Torres.
Felt like it was pretty straight. I do not have any questions.
Director Tyler.
I have one question. If you look at what's maybe the 4th paragraph after the lined out red paragraph that starts with the district's curriculum will be reviewed by professional staff annually. It seems like that's pretty nebulous. Professional staff, what does that mean?
This here as inclusive of, let's say, members of our instructional team, our curriculum teams, our content teams that are at schools. And we left it broader, so it's not teachers or just district staff, but inclusive of district-wide staff who are, playing a part in the curriculum itself.
So that's to mean district staff that aren't teachers per se.
Correct, but are on the instructional team, for example, and inclusive of content leads, for example, who are teachers at schools.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have any questions on this. I think they were all addressed during policy review.
I have a general question, not really related to this, but it seems like it's standard practice to go out and research and find curriculum that's been developed. Do any of the professional staff do any in-house development of curriculum?
It is mixed. I know that there have been years where staff has developed, let's say, phonics curriculum or programs, and so teachers might have developed them over time. What is officially adopted as curriculum, and one of the reasons why we changed many of the words from will develop curriculum to review and adopt curriculum is to account for that.
And there are also some content areas, so like social studies, which we're going through an adoption process for currently, because we don't have the adequate resources. There are teachers throughout the district who write lessons for social studies. The same for crew across different schools.
Can I ask really quick? It says tier 1 subject curriculum. On that first paragraph, I don't.
Yep, and so there's the parentheses right next to it. It's universal instruction that all students receive. So it's the in a classroom, for example, like illustrative math would be an example of tier 1 curriculum that all the students receive versus an intervention curriculum that would be delivered just to students who are identified who need that.
High school, I'm sure when you've had it taken for our history class.
The civics class.
Yeah. Is that something that we approve or that's something that we not longer give?
For civics as a graduation requirement, that would be something that all the students do need to receive.
I have another general question, sorry.
But, yeah, it's just, it's kind of something that we-
Mhm. I think there's probably an opportunity to regularly update our website that has information with curriculum on it. And it would probably be limited to major curriculum. I think that people might have a broad definition of what curriculum is versus like every single little thing versus here are the major curriculum for major subject areas that we use.
Director Step. Director Ramirez. Director Fluba. Director Morris. Director Tiger. Motion.
I have heard nothing. Am I allowed to speak?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm getting used to the formality of it. I have heard nothing personally. And I've heard no rumors of feedback. So I think the answer is no.
Yes, and it's a high bar and I appreciate that bar.
But really, if there are changes, so our hope is that we're gonna stick to this curriculum for several years. And so we shouldn't, come back next year and say, hey, we want to switch the math curriculum again and go through this adoption process again. So hopefully not soon.
What I was referencing though, what other subject areas, for example, if it's newly adopted, then similar cadence, here's the research we did, here are the stakeholders we involved, here are the headlines for why these are finalists.
Or whatever it might be. I think this speaks to that last policy, keeping updated like this.
I think also in connection probably with achievement reports and student data, having this information as a board will be helpful to be able to contextualize what is the curriculum for math and how are we seeing it happen? Or what are we seeing in terms of results for students?
Mhm. Thank you.
Director Tyler.
I would like to just start by saying thank you for staying late. I appreciate that. And the question I do have is going down to the next steps if approved. First of all, thank you for the presentation you also gave us, and it was very informative about the new curriculum. I wonder if you have any thoughts on the Bible plan and resources for tier 2 and 3 and interventions, and where is that time carved out of, or is that something that needs to be still figured out?
I'll take a stab at that. I mean, we already started having conversations about. We sort of tried to start a conversation about tier 2, and it's hard to have good conversations about tier 2 when you know that initially your conversation should be about this implementing tier 1. The tier 1 is absolutely the priority. We also, there have been conversations amongst the math leadership team about that time question. And there's a pretty clear response, I think, about what is needed, which would be 60 minutes for the lesson plus additional time for centers, which would then allow for some intervention time. So I think that it's pretty clear what we need to ask principals for in terms of time. Whether they can provide that time is another issue. And what resources we end up using for tier 2 and 3 are still, and that's an unanswered question that we are needing to research.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Step.
I anticipate, knowing that our middle and high schools have adopted illustrative math already, that there'll be a period of time where in our elementary schools, we'll eventually, after 6 years, have kids who have been using illustrative math from kindergarten through 5th before they go to our secondary schools, and probably see a noticeable difference, particularly because one of the main reasons this curriculum was selected was around the problem-based solving and thinking, which is in a different way than Engage and Bridges had necessarily been used. So I think there's a shorter term hopeful like gain. Within a couple of years, we'll continue to see some movement and projecting. I think what feels maybe stronger alignment as kids are getting that same curriculum for continuous years in our secondary schools.
I think if anybody knew that a really precise timeline about how this unfolds, we would be jumping all over that. And I don't think we know, but I think what we hope is that we see improvement right away. There has been like some research about in year 1 of a curriculum that can be hard. And sometimes you even see a dip after year 1, but after year 2, you would expect to see some gains. And I would expect to see gains across the board. And what I'm particularly excited about with K through 5 is that this is the first time in my memory that we will have one curricular resource across all our schools, which enables us to deliver professional development to everybody. So I'm really hopeful that we can see gains across all grade levels, especially in year 2. I don't know if you would want to add to that.
No, I think the other thing we've been in a lot of conversation about is what we're identifying as the common assessment for assessing how kids are doing. And with that, there are assessments that exist. It's a question of how much of it and how consistently across our schools it's being implemented. And so in a similar time frame. And I think it's helpful to have a common curriculum right now, because that leads us naturally into having an assessment for that versus having to create a new one that would assess overall, even if schools are using 2 different curriculums.
Director Stuck? Director Ramirez? Director Bloomberg? Director Torres? Director Tyler? Motion passes.
I know, celebrate.
Big deal.
And thank you for.
Thank you. And we actually have an appreciation for all of you. As hopefully all 5 of you know, it's school board member appreciation month. So we just wanted to say thank you to the 5 of you for all of your work, your dedication, and your support in directing my work, and of course supporting our school district. We have a small little token of appreciation for each of you back there. So just thank you. Record.